Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Ask ServiceMonster show, where you've got questions for your service business and we've got your answers. Today's question comes from Eric. He wants to know, Joe, in your experience, what is the sweet spot for an owner when it comes to trucks, employees, and revenue? And I'll answer that question, but the broader topic here I want to discuss is KPIs, key performance indicators. Coming off the new year, I want to be able to establish your baseline and where you'll be headed by giving you these very, very important figures. I'm going to answer Eric's question with some KPIs because it's obvious that there's really no sweet spot. There's definitely times when it sucks more than others, and I call that the employee versus how much does it suck curve. It looks like this. At no employees, as an owner-operator, it sucks 5. You have to do everything. You wear all the hats. Everything's on you, every decision's on you, every problem's on you. You have to know how to do maintenance and sales. You have to look at your accounting and you have to learn your craft. It's a huge undertaking for a single person to do everything. And so, yeah, it sucks. It takes a huge amount of hustle. Now you get a couple employees, let's say 2, 3, or 4. The suck goes up. It sucks more. Why? Because now you not only have to do your many hats, but the people that you have to bring in, they also have to wear many hats. And finding those people is tough and it takes time. And cultivating them takes time. And where do they go when there's a problem? You. And that can happen all the way to 6 or 7, even up to 8 employees. And that makes it just that much harder to deal with. Now, about 8 employees, the suck meter starts to go down. For every single employee you hire therein, things get easier. Things get more specialized. You have some layers between you and the work that's being done. At this point, you should have standard operating procedures and people should be trained on how to do things. You'll find that the specialization will cause certain areas of your business to get better than when you were doing it. The more and more people you then start to add past 8, 9, 10, man, the easier it gets. And I would say somewhere around the 8 mark is where it about sucks as bad as being a single owner operator. But as soon as that number 9 comes in, you're rolling. Now, just grounding ourselves here. Talk about 8, 9, 10 employees. That's nice, but what kind of a business needs to support that? From an economic standpoint of view, you're typically going to look at between $100,000 and $150,000 of revenue per employee. So 10 employees, you should be pushing $1 million to $1.5 million around. Don't try to line us up with this. We're an economy of scale. It's a whole different business model. But for service providers, this is very important. Now, all this funnels down to one number: margins. We did an interesting video on COGS, cost of goods sold, and help you understand and calculate some of your margins. Megan will put a link in the show notes, so you should go watch that. But margins make all the difference. If you have 1 employee, which is you, and you have awesome margins, life is pretty good. Obviously, there's a little bit of risk if you get hurt and you have to hustle all the time. But at the end of the day, if you have good margins, you're making good profit. And that shouldn't change. As you get 2, 3, 4, 5 employees, you should be looking at your margins. Now, this gets tough. Your first 2 to 5 employees actually will probably decrease margins. Any non-billable hours that is on addition to what you can do is actually going to be draining that margin from the company. So you need to make sure that you can support that. But once you get 6 or 7 people in place, it's quite interesting. Now you've got more billable time, you're drawing in more revenue, and that's just fuel to the fire. Now, margins are just one key performance indicator you should be looking at in your business. I think it's the most important one, because if you don't have a good margin, you have no business. Here's an example. How about a business that opens up, dude's super pumped, right? Every time he puts his wares on the side of the road, 30 seconds, they're gone. He can't keep inventory. He goes to the store and he buys a bushel of apples for $2 and he comes to the side of the road and sells them, and lo and behold, people are just buying them in droves. He has no idea what's going on. All he knows is it works, and he got to tell his buddy. His buddy asks, how much money are you making? It's like, I make the money that I off the side of the road when I sell the apples. No. How much are you selling the apples for? So $1.50 a pound. Wait, you're buying it for $2 a pound and you're selling them for $1.50. No wonder they're flying off like hotcakes. You're losing 50 cents a pound every time you do it. That's not a business. You're giving away money. So yeah, margins are important, right? You've got to make sure that your margins are positive, and a lot of you guys are really too close for comfort. Again, go watch that video. Now, when you know more about your business in terms of your key performance indicators, you're going to make better business decisions, and they're going to be driven by data, not your gut. Your gut's going to be right much of the time. Entrepreneur, right? I mean, we got this far on our gut. So I get that. And a lot of times you're just going to have to trust things because you won't have data and numbers to back it up. But if you have the data and the numbers and you choose not to use them, that's just plain stupid. All right, so just a couple KPIs I want to go over very briefly. I did a whole speech on this. It takes about 2 hours, but I'll try to condense that down for you in just a few minutes here. Let's talk about repeat rate. Next to margins, repeat rate is the most important KPI in your business. As a service provider, your repeat rate is kind of everything. It gives you the ability to grow and scale and move forward. Without a repeat rate, it's just attrition. You're just paddling yourself around. You're going after the individual transactions, and every new lead is just as important as every lead before it. If you have an established client base that you're pulling in back and doing services for regularly, then that's just going to help you grow and build. That's why client retention programs are so important. Now, your repeat rate is kind of hard to calculate. You'll typically say, as a service provider, if they've used my services at least once every 2 years, we're going to call them repeat, right? Don't calculate out your monthly. That'll just give you a weird number that doesn't make any sense. But your repeat rate over a long period of time, looked at on a regular basis, yeah, decisions to move that upward is a good idea. Total market potential. So what is the size of your demographic in your area? I'm surprised by the number of service providers that don't know that. Here's an exercise. Go to Info USA and pretend like you're going to buy a list, and draw a circle around a targeted area in your geographic location. The radius of that circle should be the willingness you travel to provide service. Start looking at single homeowners or commercial or whatever you want to dial in, and take a look at what the number is. That is your total potential market. If you owned 100% of the market, how many clients would you have? This is a kind of a grounding number for you. You'll understand where you're at in the industry. Two interesting points to make here. When your market acquisition is 1% of your total market potential, you start to see referrals start to kick off in a big way. At 10%, I've seen customers abandon all other lead acquisition programs and just have those referrals feed their lead pipeline. Average invoice, you should track this, you should know it. And that way, when you make changes in your business and that goes up or down, you'll have a little bit of causality to play with here. Obviously, talking about it is going to increase it. Calvin said if you don't measure it, you can't improve it. And I've certainly found that to be true. But what I also found to be true is if you measure it, it will improve. That's an inverse of that logic, but it's true. When you're staring at it and looking at it all the time, you're going to put some effort and energy into making the needle move. Clients by lead source. So you should know generally what's bringing your clients in. And now you want to track this two ways: client acquisition and repeat. So where do your repeat rates come from? Where does your repeat business come from? The first time you talk to a client, you're going to get kind of where they heard about you, and that's going to be your lead source for the client. And that should remain a fact forever. You should never change that. You should also be tracking lead sources against your work orders. The first work order is going to have the same lead source as your client typically, but it may not if they came in and then went away and then came back 6 months later off of another campaign. Subsequent work orders are going to have different lead sources because those are going to be your customer acquisition campaigns. So it gives you a great idea of what's going on in the playing field and what's either driving clients to you or driving them back. Average time by order group. So essentially what you're doing is you're saying for each type of order that we do, because obviously a dry out is going to be much different than, let's say, a duct cleaning, or much different than a tile cleaning, or much different than a window washing. So if you provide multiple services, you want to break this up a little bit onto those different kind of categories. How long does it take you though on average? Knowing that will help you calculate COGS, which we talked about in that other video. Sales pipeline. So a lot of you guys don't even manage this or think about this at all. You just answer the phone, and if you book the job, yay, and if you don't, whatever. Are you cultivating those people you're not closing? Quick story about myself. When I moved to Bellingham, and we moved the whole business here to Bellingham in 2006. When we moved here, I knew that I wanted to get the carpets cleaned in the new home before I moved all the furniture in. I talked to 3 different carpet cleaners here in Bellingham, and guess what? I got busy. I never booked the job. And what happened is I was driving up the day that I pulled the truck up and went, oh no, I forgot about the dang cleaning. Loss. Now, if any one of those guys called me back, I would have booked the job in that second. So managing a lead pipeline is critical if you want to make sure you're closing those deals, because Mrs. Jones doesn't always pull the trigger just by the first phone call. Churn. This one's a little more out of the box. Service providers typically don't track it. But with your contracts, either your commercial contracts that you clean on a regular basis or the clients that you're signing up for on your regular contract program, you want to know what your base is and what you're losing, what the attrition is. That loss is called churn. And that's something that we've tracked here since day one, not because it was a cool KPI for venture capitalists, but because it was a method of survival for us. Understanding what our churn is part of the foundation of this business. And the more and more recurring contract work you have, the more it'll be for you too. Okay guys, 3 points wrapping up here. Number one, you wanna make your KPIs super important in your business, but you wanna make those margins and your repeat rate a religion. Number two, try to simplify your systems so that you can look at these numbers on a regular basis. This is where the real horsepower comes in. Now, if you have to pull the numbers from QuickBooks or do an Excel spreadsheet, play with that. See if you can figure out how to do a simple copy and paste or an export. If you're using something like ServiceMonster, we give you these reports already, along with aligning them on what you looked like last year so you can tell if you're up or down. And number three, drive your decisions off of numbers, not strictly off your gut, and especially not leaving out the data that you have right before you. Until next time, guys, subscribe to our YouTube channel, go check out the demo, and give us a call.